Glory to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to another episode of City of Desert. And once again, we are picking up with our reading from the first volume of the Philokalia and the writings of Evagrius of Pontus. And if you remember, we have started a new section of his writing within the text called Text on Discrimination in Respect of Passions and Thoughts. And even reading through this next little section that we're going through, one will begin to see what an extraordinary primer Evagrius is giving to us in regards to the inner spiritual warfare that we fight, in particular with the thoughts and the particular passions that they are tied to. Just extraordinary, very clear and direct, and gives us a sense of the anthropology, the psychology, and the spirituality of the Desert Fathers as a whole. So once again, Evagrius should be held forward with great esteem for those who are reading the Desert Fathers as being the great teacher, but also the foundation for much of the thought that comes after him and other fathers. Today we are on page 38 of the first volume of the Philokalia, and we're picking up with saying number 2, beginning at the bottom of the page. Evagrius writes, all thoughts inspired by the demons produce within us conceptions of sensory objects. And in this way, the intellect, with such conceptions imprinted on it, bears the forms of these objects within itself. So by recognizing the object presented to it, the intellect knows which demon is approaching. For example, if the face of a person who has done me harm or insulted me appears in my mind, I recognize the demon of rancour approaching. If there is a suggestion of material things or of esteem, again, it will be clear which demon is troubling me. In the same way, with other thoughts, we can infer from the object appearing in the mind which demon is close at hand, suggesting that object to us. I do not say that all thoughts of such things come from the demons, for when the intellect is activated by man, it is its nature to bring forth the images of past events. But all thoughts producing anger or desire in a way that is contrary to nature are caused by demons. For through demonic agitation, the intellect mentally commits adultery and becomes incensed. Thus, it cannot receive the vision of God, who sets us in order. For the divine splendor only appears to the intellect during prayer, when the intellect is free from conceptions of sensory objects. The language might be somewhat foreign to us here as we go through a first reading of the text, in particular, the use of the word intellect. And we've talked about this many times in past episodes, that there is no great English word for the Greek word that is used here for intellect, nous. In reality, it is the eye, if you will, the eye of the heart, the eye of the soul, that provided it is purified by the grace of God through the ascetic life and uh, uh, and through a depth of prayer. All impediments then are removed, where in faith we are able to perceive the things of God. But when the eye of the heart, this nous, has been fragmented by a multitude of thoughts, or when it has embraced these thoughts in a deep way and habitually, to the point that they become passions, they have a hold on us, they become habitual, then it becomes absolutely impossible for us to, in prayer, have an experience of intimacy with God, or to have our minds and our hearts illuminated by faith because of this obstruction, because of this fragmentation. And so the purification of the heart, that is the nous, is the immediate goal of the spiritual life. And Evagrius describes it towards the end of this paragraph, the particular way that the Eastern Fathers approach this by moving towards a stillness of mind and heart, moving from the multiplicity of thoughts to simplicity. The simplicity of thought meaning directing our thoughts, our desires toward God and toward Him alone. And so you'll find within the East an emphasis on non-discursive meditation or prayer. That is, not making use of words, of thoughts, of images, of ideas, but rather simply directing the mind and the heart toward God with love, unobstructed, as I said, by the fragmentation that such thoughts, in particular the provocations of the evil one, bring to us. And so Evagrius begins by telling us that the demons produce conceptions of sensory objects. And in this way, the intellect or the nous has these conceptions imprinted upon it. So we are in a constant state of receptivity through our senses. And unguarded, then the thought, the images of what we perceive or experience through these senses becomes imprinted upon the mind, imprinted upon the memory, the imagination. So the conception that is imprinted because of our openness to the world around us indiscriminately imprints itself upon us in a very deep way. And so guarding the heart, guarding the intellect, the nous, is a central aspect of the Eastern Fathers' teaching. And here we see why. Because imprinted upon the mind, the imagination, and the memory makes it very difficult for us to uproot them, to see where they are coming from. And so the deeper rooted they become, the more difficult they are to remove, especially in memory. But as Evagrius tells us, in recognizing the object that is presented to us, we come then to also see where the thought is coming from which demon. And so if he says, for example, we face a person who's done us harm or insulted us, we recognize a particular demon that is approaching, rancour, anger, that we are going to call to mind not only this individual, but the harm they've done to us and the feelings that are associated with that. And so it begins to take root in the mind through these thoughts. And then these thoughts become linked together in a kind of fantasy, a conversation with this person that we imagine ourselves having. If there's a suggestion of material things or of esteem, again, is clear the demon that is troubling me. So that of avarice or of vainglory. So if we are constantly desiring the things of the world and to gain material goods, we are becoming avaricious, that the desire for these goods continues to grow and take hold of us, but is also rooted in vainglory, self-esteem, because we're seeking to elevate ourselves in our own mind through what it is that we possess, that our identity becomes rooted in these realities. He continues, in the same way with other thoughts, we can infer from the object appearing which demon is close at hand, suggesting the object to us. So we are able to prepare ourselves. If we are watchful, if we are scanning, as it were, the horizon of our own thoughts, and we see something come into our mind, we do not allow our mind simply to be dragged along with it. And we take that thought captive, as St. Paul tells us in Corinthians, and make it obedient to Christ. We examine it in the full light of truth so that we can see its origin and engage in battle against it. Now, here's one caveat here. I do not say that all thoughts of such things come from the demons. For when the intellect is activated by man, it is its nature to bring forth images of past events. So it's not only the demons that provoke us, we can provoke ourselves. Because when we have exposed ourselves to certain thoughts, images, ideas in the past, they become rooted in the imagination and in particular in the memory. And so we might come across something on a given day that triggers this memory, even though it's not conscious for us at the moment, that triggers this memory within us, as well as the conception, the sensory object that is tied to it. And there again, we can see the nature of the temptation, the nature of the thought truly, and begin to struggle against it. The difference here being that we are the origin of our own temptation. This is an important thing for us and a humbling thing for us to understand about the spiritual life, that sometimes we are our own worst enemies. We are the carpenter of our own crosses. And so the more that we have allowed ourselves to engage in the things of this world indiscriminately, the more we then become the source of our own sorrow and the sin that dwells within our minds and our hearts. He continues, but all thoughts producing anger or desire in a way that is contrary to nature are caused by demons. Through demonic agitation, the intellect mentally commits adultery and becomes incensed. So there might arise within us then certain things that are contrary to nature, that we have never experienced, that we would never imagine for ourselves, and yet have a kind of heinous and sinful quality to them. And it's then that we can be sure that the provocation comes from the evil one. He will put everything before our mind's eye, if you will, in order to draw us into sin, or simply to disturb the mind, to fragment the mind, to fragment the heart. And this is an important thing, again, to understand about the spiritual life, that the evil one can disrupt this intimacy that we have with God through prayer and through stillness by simply presenting us with thoughts that are disturbing to us, that agitate us in one form or another. And even if we shift our focus to spurn these thoughts, to scorn them, he can redirect our attention away from God and onto himself and the thoughts that come to us because they are so disturbing. So we have to be aware of this, to live in this constancy of prayer, of turning the mind and the heart toward God, or to the things of God, meditating upon scriptures, unceasing prayer, reading the fathers, participating in the sacramental life, filling the mind, the heart, the imagination, which bears fruit unto eternity, that bears the fruit of virtue as well as weakening the passion's grip upon us. He says, thus it cannot receive the vision of God who sets us in order, for the divine splendor only appears to the intellect, that is the nous, during prayer, when the nous is free from conceptions of sensory objects. So, again, he spells out clearly for us that when the mind, the heart, the nous, the eye of the heart, is disturbed, clouded, when it lacks that limpid purity, where we are able to see the things of God clearly, then we are not able to enter into this intimacy with the Lord. And this only comes to us in a time of prayer, when we've turned the mind and the heart, our whole selves toward God, when we've become prayer, and so not attentive at all to the things around us or the thoughts that might be presented to us by the evil one, but become wholly focused upon God. It's then that we begin to taste something of the sweetness of purity of heart, what it allows us to see, what it allows us to experience of God, of his mercy, of his compassion. And we begin to experience within us a growing desire for prayer and for the life of virtue. And so let us pray once again today for this gift of discrimination of thoughts that Evagrius describes for us, that we would be always attentive to what is being presented to the mind or what arises out of the unconscious or the imagination, so that all that we think, as well as all that we would do, would be for the greater glory of God. Thank you, and God bless you, and have a wonderful day.